several mid-motor setups for drag slash is a rear motor. There are many mid-motor setups for no prep drag racing for RCs, and this is one of them. This happens to be the team associated DR10M, and it has a little more tunability than some of the others. Now it is a mid-motor 4 gears, and there are other chassis that you can get and build a mid-motor 4-gear transmission, for example. Now, really quick, I am going to talk about the different settings and lifting the transmission on this car, which will apply to other cars with a similar design. But I am going to mention a few of the things with the DR10M, since that is the car that I'm using here as an example. Now, a few little notes before I start. These little washers, these are 440s. And I put these here just so the suspension wouldn't bottom out and then this wouldn't scrape in case it hit something. But to be honest, when you run it right now with the electronics that it has, it never bottoms out enough. So nothing to worry about. In here, I was running a 13.5 Trinity motor as of the time of this video. I think, or maybe I swapped out the electronics. Maybe I swapped out the electronics to the Reedy from the DR10 because I was making a comparison between the two cars. That's the reason why I keep saying if you have the DR10, don't run and trade your car in for a DR10M. If you're using the same electronics or something very similar, you're probably not going to notice the difference. Not really. Not if you're just going to parking lots, things like that. If you're very, very competitive and you need the edge, maybe you want the extra tunability. If not, don't worry about it. DR10 is all you need. So back to this vehicle. This is something that we have here. Now the transmission is adjustable, so this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's these little plastic shims that go in here under the chassis plate and the transmission. Well, the transmission's in front of this mount right here, of the shock mount. So if you put just one shim on there, these screws would be here, 2, 3, and 4. And this is the adjustability, so you'd be lifting the transmission, and that also raises the center of gravity. But to be honest, I don't really think the center of gravity with these adjustments is the biggest deal. The biggest deal is actually these shafts. So something about the DR10. This is the setting at number 3, and I think number 3 is probably the best spot. You can go to 4. I'm not so sure about 4. I think that might be a little too high, but I'm going to explain why. But let me go and show you 1 first. So if we go to setting 1, this is what it looks like in setting 1. Now this shot I actually got 1 slightly closer up, but this is 1. And afterwards I am going to run the vehicle so you can see how they ran. But if you look at the shafts right here, look at the angle. So these are angled up quite a bit. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is, you're going to notice in the video when I play it, this is a lot of anti-squat. So this car is going to take off. The suspension is actually pretty soft. It's stock. So this is stock oil, stock spring. This is just set to where, I mean, this is somewhat straight. I mean, that's as far as the shock will go. So doesn't compress anymore. Sorry, doesn't extend anymore. But when the car takes off, because of this sharp angle, suspension's almost non-existent. And what I mean by almost non-existent is there's so much anti-squat here that when you accelerate and the shafts lift up, so they're like this, as you accelerate, they want to straighten out. So in order for them to straighten out, 2 things are going to happen. 1, it's going to want to drop the tire so that it matches the transmission, and it's going to want to raise the transmission, so it's going to try to lift the center of the car to straighten this out. So if you think of a straight line, right, you can lift this to make it straight, or you can lower this to make it straight, or you do both. So one of the things that you're going to notice when you run it is it's not really going to compress. This suspension is not going to compress almost at all, so you might as well have a fixed suspension, which you cannot do because no prep rules the suspension has to be fully functional. So this is one way that you can get away that rule. Instead of going with really thick oil, really thick springs, just give it a lot of anti-squat, and this thing, you're going to see, it doesn't care. All right, so back to this. Now this is going to apply a lot of force to the tires, but something to keep in mind is the following. And now it depends on the surface as well, it's going to react differently. This is just concrete. If you're running asphalt, it's not going to be as smooth and uniform as concrete, so that's something to keep in mind. Well, then again, it depends on the asphalt that you're running. But this is going to apply a lot of pressure on the tires, a lot of downward force on the tires on the pavement. And because the suspension is acting as a very hard suspension because of the anti-squat, the car is going to want to sort of bounce. And the tires are really going to be acting as a suspension. One of the things that I've spoken in some of the other videos, I don't remember how long ago, but the outside and the inside, it's the video where I was comparing about tires, talking about tires. There isn't really much rubber here to absorb the shock versus on the outside, so it's somewhat uneven, and that's normal for these type of vehicles because, well, one is using short course style wheels, slash specifically, the slash offset, but this has to absorb the impact. So one of the things that you're going to notice is the car might bounce as it takes off a little, and then it'll sort of steer it toward one side or the other. So that's something to keep in mind. Do I like the one setting? Not really. I started off with it. I was doing all right, so it was doing well. But as I started lifting the transmission, it did better. And number 2, it did well. So number 2, one of the things that you may be able to notice, although it's a different angle, these are no longer such a sharp angle as when this used to be lower. Now it's a little higher, so it lifts this part as well. So these are a little straighter, a little less anti-squat. But you're going to notice so it doesn't squat as much either, but squats a little more than in the other setting. So this still applies some pressure, but it makes it a little easier to drive the car, based on what I found running the vehicle. This is why I decided to do this video. I thought, hey, why not? Let's just go ahead and do it. Now, a quick little note. Setting number 2 on this particular chassis, DR10M, this is the highest you can have the transmission without adjusting these links. So these are the sway bar links right here, right behind. So it goes to this, and then this is the sway bar right over here. So the link, you can't really see it, but the link is there. You will have to loosen the link once you go to 3 and 4, which at 4, I don't really like it much. So why do you have to loosen it at 3? The reason why is this shaft. See how much straighter this shaft is? I found that 3 is the easiest setting. That's why I didn't even bother going to 4. But 3, there's less anti-squat, so it allows the suspension to work a little compared to 1. 1, it doesn't allow the suspension to work as much, I guess. Yeah, it's still doing something, bouncing. But I did have to loosen these links, and when you loosen them, do use calipers. Make sure it's the same distance from here to here as it is from here to here. If not, if you just try to eyeball it, you might be alright, but it may cause the vehicle to sort of steer one way or the other, because as the sway bar starts working and applying pressure, they're not going to be the same length. So this actually does matter. If you're just bashing about, maybe hanging out with some friends, it probably won't matter as much because you can always oversteer, try to steer, slow down, etc. And your friends are probably going to be screwing up as well, maybe. But if you want to be a little more competitive, well, even if you want to be more competitive with your friends, make sure they're equal length. So calipers go a long way. But the main thing is this shaft is a lot straighter, so there's less anti-squat. I mean, you could go to 4, you just have to extend these just a little more to clear that shaft, which is fine. So on the DR10M, I would say setting 3 or setting 4, those are really the best settings. 2 is alright, 1, not really. The car bounces a little too much. But go ahead and try them out, see what you think. But on something like this, I don't think a lot of anti-squat is a good idea. It makes the car too bouncy. Now again, why? Because with anti-squat, a lot of it, such as this, these shafts have too much of an angle. So if we were to draw an imaginary straight line through here to the center, just so it's level, right? So say this is level, the ground is level, and then we draw a line from here to here, and it's a level line. Well, I mean, if you draw a line from one point to another, that's a straight line. But you're going to notice, actually, if we use the sway bar as a reference, right from here, you're going to notice the big angle, because this would hit somewhere about here, and this would hit somewhere around there. So you notice the angle. So again, when this spins, it wants to straighten out this way. So it's going to push the arms and the tires down toward the pavement. It's going to lift the rear end, so it's not going to squat. That's why it's anti-squat. It's actually lifting the rear. It's preventing it from squatting. Creates that resistance. Which means that if your suspension is not absorbing all of the impacts, all of the bumps, then the next best thing will be your tires. Keep in mind that tires, yes, they are for traction, but your wheels and tires, the tires are part of the suspension. So these are going to be absorbing all of the impact then, and these are not really going to be helping much. But then again, if you're an individual that wants to figure out how to pack these things and make them really hard so they don't compress, just do anti-squat, and then you can keep nice soft suspension so you can get through tech. But again, test it, drive it, see if you actually like it. I ended up not liking it. Like I said, I ended up preferring the level 3. And in the video, this is the reason why. This was actually the easiest to steer. The car was more composed. This being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope this was informative, or at least entertaining. Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you in the next one.
What? Oh, my hat! My car! My rod!